You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into another 3-Mod Pod. I am John Kurtz, joined as always by Cole Manbeck and Derek Young. And today we have a special guest in tow. If you've been watching a lot of Big 12 basketball, which I'm sure pretty much everybody has here, you know our next guest, Fran Fraschilla from ESPN, does a great job on the basketball broadcast. We've got plenty of him this year, which has been awesome, and we are thrilled to talk to him about K-State and the Big 12 as we head here into March. First, though, remember to drink up, get your Holiday Distillery, Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon, your 360 vodka, whatever your flavor of choice is. They are great K-State folks who have supported our pod, so please support those who support us, and whether you're celebrating the Cats, whether you're pre-gaming, whatever it might be, 360 vodka, Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon. Fran, we appreciate you so much taking the time to join us here. It feels like during basketball season, you're almost a member of the extended family, right? Because we're all watching so much Big 12 basketball. Let's take a step back here. So we're thrilled we just got done doing another pod about K-State winning again on Saturday in Stillwater, first road win in about a month and a half. And this team, if you take inventory of where they're at right now, 2 or a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, incredible. You saw this team up close and personal early on in the offseason before the season started. Did you think there was ever any chance we'd be sitting here talking about this team the way that we are right now based on what you saw back then?
No, but I did say when I came up in October, I usually make a trip through the league. I'll make a southern trip to TCU and Baylor and Texas and then maybe work my way up to OU and OSU. And then I always make a trip out to K-State, KU, and Iowa State during Big 12 Media Day. And so I came out on that Monday to Manhattan. And honestly, John, what I did notice is the vibe was incredible. The positivity, the coaching staff. I knew a lot of the coaches. And I knew Jerome. I've known Jerome for 20 years. I've known him since I've gotten to ESPN. We moved to Dallas. My wife and I had 2 sons. We moved to Dallas in 2002. And then I started working for ESPN in 2003 at the time that Bill Self and Scott Drew joined the league. So I've known Jerome all this time. But what I will tell you about my trip to Manhattan in October was I didn't know how many games they would win, but the vibe, the joy, the positivity, the high standard was definitely palpable in the practice facility. But to say that I would ever thought that they would be really a top 10 team, we'll find out when the new poll comes out, but this is a legit top 10, top 15 program right now. And it's not just because of Jerome's great coaching. You've got 2 of the best players in the country, really, probably 2 of the top 25 players in the country on this team and some really good role players. So I'm surprised, but it's a great surprise because I'm a big fan of Coach Tang, and I'm also a big fan I've always loved coming to Manhattan. Coach Weber was a good friend, Frank Martin, hugs, so it's fun.
What has impressed you, Fran, the most about what Coach Tang and this coaching staff's done?
It's very similar to what I saw Cole at Baylor, honestly. He and Scott Drew are really brothers, they really are. They're as close as two people could be without being related by blood. And so a lot of the same qualities, the positivity, the intensity without the demeaning attitude in practice, that's what really stands out. And the fact that, like Tommy Lloyd last year, who was a longtime assistant, Jerome Tang is likely to be a very, very strong National Coach of the Year candidate, given that he had no head coaching experience, so to speak. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll kind of put you on the spot then. I know Bill Self is up there as well as a candidate.
Yeah.
Would you go Jerome Tang or Bill Self at this point?
Well, I would go Jerome Tang, and here's what I'd say about that. And some of your listeners may not like me saying this. I think Bill Self's the best coach in the country. There's some great coaches. I mean, now all these guys are friends of mine, as you know, Derek. But Bill's right there at the top, one of the best. I got a cough here, so excuse me one second. But the expectation for Bill Self, Mark Few, Matt Painter every year, Mick Cronin now, is they're going to be really good, top 10 good. And so we don't give guys like Bill Self the credit for being great coaches. In his case, he's replacing 75% of his scoring from a national championship team. Whereas Carolina has everybody back, and they're not going to qualify for the tournament more than likely. They played them in the championship game. So Bill does get penalized for being such a great coach for so long. I've always thought the National Coach of the Year is more about expectations and how you just go way past those. And I think that's what Jerome has done.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and you're going to make some friends on this podcast going down that road. Now,
by the way, I do think, John, he's going to be National Coach of the Year in many polls.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think that, and I do have a vote on a couple of them. Shaka Smart's done an amazing job. Phil Self, Matt Painter, but he's going to get my vote.
Love it. Well, this would be a bridge too far for you. We'll see. But Cole has done a good job of compiling some of the numbers, and actually on Twitter put out just a blind kind of resume test for Big 12 Player of the Year.
Yeah.
If you're looking at Marquise Noel, number one in scoring in Big 12 plays, number one in assists, steals, free throw percentage, ahead of Jalen Wilson in player efficiency rating and offensive rating. But I think, most people would look at it and say Jalen Wilson's going to be the runaway favorite there. How would you evaluate the Big 12 Player of the Year race?
I think most fans and most media, no offense to anybody who's media, they're probably going to vote for Jalen Wilson, and I might too. Jalen's had an amazing year given that they lost so much scoring. I think what hurts Marquise and Keontae is that they're going to probably split the vote.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I think on the all. Think about this for a second. If I were voting today for Big 12 first team and I only could pick 5, it would probably be Jalen Wilson, Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, and then I'd have to make a choice between Adam Flagler, Marcus Carr, and Mike Miles, keeping in mind that Mike Miles missed 6 games. But those 3 at the top are a lock. They should be. And so what hurts, I think, Marquise and Keontae, and this is why they're good. By the way, this is not a bad problem to have. This is a good problem. Like, you have fans might say, oh, Marquise Noel got screwed. He should have been Player of the Year. Yeah, well, how about if I took Keontae Johnson off the Cats? Yeah. They would say, no, don't do that. So I think what hurts Marquise is that he's got another guy with him that's equally as good. But that's why this team could literally get to an Elite 8 or a Final 4. That's how good they've been. And then I think Saturday, not to jump off tangentially here, but Saturday showed you that they could go on the road in the league, play a desperate team, not play great, and still come away with a really quality win. And but it's because they have 2 great players, not just one.
Well, speaking of Keontae, Fran, I mean, what do you make of what he's been able to do after not playing in a college basketball game for nearly 2 years?
Remarkable, no question. Honestly, Cole, and I don't want to put the whammy on him, but I've had NBA friends of mine say, what do you think? Not that they're going to draft a guy because of me, they're not. But he's a professional basketball player someday. He really is. The one issue with his situation, just like a serious knee injury and his heart condition, I don't want to minimize how critical it was, how his life was in danger. We know that. But the one thing that's going to stop him is teams are going to say, we don't want to give him millions of dollars until we absolutely know he's 100% healthy. But as far as a player, he's an NBA player. There is no question about that. And the reason I say that about his heart is because as a general manager, you have to go to your billionaire owner and say, we're gonna commit $20 million to this guy by taking him with the 7th pick. And there has to be a lot of due diligence done before that happens. But is it a miraculous story? Yes. Does he deserve everything he's getting? Yes. Is he a really good player? Is he an NBA player? Talent-wise, probably is. So we're going to see. We'll let the chips fall where they may on his pro career, but what he's doing right now is just an amazing story. It's going to be a great March Madness story. It's going to be a great March Madness story for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, Fran, sorry to interrupt you there. If it wasn't for any of the things you just mentioned, the heart and everything, where do you think he might go in the NBA draft based off what he's done in his career in this season?
If it wasn't for the heart issue, he wouldn't be at K-State this year.
Well,
yeah. NBA.
Yeah.
He'd probably be a second-year rookie, second-year guy, And, but having said that, the great story is what has happened to him. He has handled it, overcome some amazing adversity, found a home with Coach Tang and the staff and Marquise Noel. And he's an NBA player. I'd say he's a first-round pick, talent, no doubt. No doubt about it.
I asked this, of someone the other day, so I'm curious to hear your answer.
Yep.
Penn State has gone through a tough stretch whenever they lost 5-7. They do have a loss at Butler. When things aren't going their way, when they are not right, what is it? Is it just a product of the Big 12, or do they have a glaring deficiency somewhere?
Well, I think this is a year, Derek, where every one of the top 20 teams has deficiencies. Like there's no Gonzaga or Baylor from a couple of years ago. We thought Gonzaga might be the team that went undefeated and did something that hasn't been done since '76, and then of course Baylor knocked them off. But this is a year where if they have deficiencies, so does everybody else. Purdue's freshman guards can't make a shot right now. Kansas doesn't have a ton of depth. We can go down the list, obviously. Duke's too young. UCLA sometimes struggles to score. In this case, I think it's probably maybe an offensive drought here or there, or maybe a little bit more that they don't get a lot of scoring up front from their 5 spot. Their offense and the paint is really more Keontae putting it on the floor and getting to the basket, which is a fine. So I think that would be one factor, is just, offensive drought. As far as the losing 5 out of 7, I think you'd have to, I said this in December. When I used to look at my basketball schedule as a coach, I would look at like 4 games in early February and say, oh my God, that's a gauntlet. Okay. The gauntlet in the Big 12 this year started December 31st and it's going to end March 4th. And 8 of the teams have had 3-game losing streaks, including Kansas. So it's just a lot of it is a product of your schedule and where you play teams. I was surprised to know that they hadn't won a road game since January 7th. But then it's not surprising when you think how hard this league is. And that's it. That's a whole other story that hopefully we'll get into, is how good the league has been. But I think what K-State has done, and then to go on the road on Saturday and get a really good quality road win. They protected home court. They've got some, that trip in early January. Not a lot of people are going to beat Texas and Baylor on the same trip.
Yeah, we can get into how difficult the Big 12 is if you want right now, because I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you heard the comments from Steve Forbes to kind of put the doubt into the Big 12 because of the quadrant system and how they just get quad one game every night. How do you would respond to that?
Steve Forbes is a good friend of mine, and he's frustrated that the ACC, when I was growing up, it was, when I was growing up, it was just the ACC. And then when I was a young coach, it was the Big East and the Big Ten. I coached in the Big Ten and the Big East. And I feel bad for Coach Forbes because, and this is a product of ESPN too. I'm shocked that at ESPN, like the SEC, Jimmy Dykes does a good job on the SEC, kind of promotes the league. I think he's kind of taking the cue from me in some ways. And then the ACC, I don't know, man. I know Duke and Carolina are there. Virginia's sometimes good. Miami is really sneaky good with Nigel Pack. Sorry about that. I saw him a couple weeks ago. But I think it's worked out pretty well for you guys and for him. He has a nice car, by the way. Wow. He does. It's legal. But no, he's got a nice car. But my point is, Coach Forbes is frustrated that nobody promotes the ACC, or at least we could do a better job at ESPN promoting the league. So that's just him spouting, and he's got a right to do it. But part of it is because this league has been so chronicled over 20 years, and even going back before that. This is must-watch TV now. Let's face it. Why do you think Dick and Jay come out to the Big 12? I mean, they have a choice of games they can pick, and I don't have the same leverage at ESPN. So, yeah, I'd love to do Kansas-Baylor, I'd love to do the second Kansas State KU game. But given the games they get a chance to do, why would they do an ACC game? Why would they do Wake Forest Duke? Come on. We know that. As UB Brown would say, come on, we all know this. Okay, come on. Anyway, so he doesn't really have a point. And he's a good friend.
Is this convincingly the best league that you've been around since you started covering the Big 12? Is it hyperbolic to say that this is the best?
No. And here's why. Here's why. I coached in the Big Ten in 88, 89 as a young coach at Ohio State. That league had 27 NBA players. Back then, nobody left early. So when Michigan and Illinois got to the Final Four, that was the Flying Illini. That was the Michigan team with Ramil Robinson and Glenn Rice. Michigan had 7 future NBA players on it, and Illinois probably had 5. And so that was an amazing league. I was in the Big East when Alonzo Mourning and how about Mutombo and Mourning on the same team at Georgetown, and other great players, Billy Ollis, Derek Coleman, and the Hall of Fame, probably 5 Hall of Fame coaches. So, but having said that, John, it's a different era, one and done. College basketball doesn't have as many pros as it used to and especially ready-made pros because everybody's drafting these high school 19-year-olds or one and done college kids like Derek Lively from Duke. Well, what this league has in my 20 years around ESPN, incredibly the most balanced from 1 to 10. That's where this league is better than everybody, is that with 5 Hall of Fame coaches, 5 coaches who've been National Coach of the Year, and all the great upperclassmen players through the years, Javon Carter and Barry Brown and Buddy Hield and Frank Mason, and all the guys that stay, Monty Morris, George Niang. This league has great coaches and it has great upperclassmen players. And the balance between 10 and 1 this year, from whoever's at 10 right now, I don't even know who it is, to 1, any one of the teams in this league could get to a Sweet 16 this year. That's how good the league is.
Well, on the heels of that, and before I ask you this question, I guess I should preface this with, we had Gary Parrish on, I think, right after the Kansas win.
Yeah.
And he told us he thinks K-State could win a national championship this year. So that's the precedent that's been set here. But how deep can this team go? Like what is the ceiling for this K-State team in the NCAA tournament?
Well, you've had some pretty good K-State teams get to the Elite Eight recently, right? Think about that, under Coach Martin and Coach Weber. And so I don't want to predict they're getting to the Elite Eight, but they're one of 15 to 20 teams in the country that can get to a Final Four. Okay? That Sweet 16 game where they're playing what would be a 7 seed or a 6 seed, and I'm thinking like off the top of my head, I can't even think of anybody right now. Michigan State maybe, in a grinded out game. And could they lose 57, 55? Sure they could. But could they get to a Final Four? They're one of 15 to 20 teams I believe can, because they're a very connected team. They're well coached and they have 2 very, very good, if not great, college players. They got 2. I think in this season they got 2 of the top 20 to 25 players in the country, and I might be conservative.
How much does it benefit the Big 12 teams, Fran, to go through the grind of Big 12 play, and then you get into the NCAA tournament and you're going against somebody new finally, and you get out of that gauntlet? Is that more of a benefit, or do you think these teams are just physically exhausted by that point after going through the 18-game grind of the Big 12?
I think it's both, Cole. I think it's both. I think it can be both. And I think we're smart coaches. I used to do this as a young coach, and I think some of the coaches in this league are smart enough to know by this time right now, there's not so much more you can put into practice. Like the biggest thing going, like here's something I've been around basketball my whole life. I heard this is new, so I'll throw it to you, and you can even say that I invented this phrase, but I didn't, February is the shortest month of the calendar, but it's the longest month of the basketball season because all these kids and coaches are exhausted from practicing for months and months. They can't wait to get till March conference tournament, March Madness. And so how you bring a team home down the stretch, I think for a coach, it's really important. So I think a big thing going into March is absolutely the competition has helped the league. But I think as a coach and a player, you have to make sure you're mentally fresh and rested. I've seen it work both ways. Look at Iowa State last year, 7 or 11 in the league. They go to a Sweet 16.
Do you think that's been the biggest key to K-State's kind of turnaround over the last couple of weeks? Is Jerome Tang, you mentioned it on the broadcast, I think before, he rested the guys a couple days, and he started to maybe pump the brakes a little bit, and it seems like they've been refreshed since then, and they got their legs back underneath them.
Yeah, I think so. But, in this league, it's peacock today, feather duster tomorrow. So it sounds great. It's all great coach speak, media speak until, and I don't know that they'll lose at home this week, but, you're only as good as your last game. So I think Jerome would probably say, if you asked him that, hey, 1-0, right? 1-0. So I do think they looked really fresh and rested on Saturday on the road. They did. Desi Sills, he's an Energizer bunny. The other guys all look pretty sharp. So it's really important going into March that mentally you're as prepared as you are physically.
You've touched this on the broadcast a bit as well, and I think one of the more impressive things that Coach Tang has done is re-energize the fan base. You've been to Bramlage Coliseum a few times this year where it's a little bit more jacked up than it was the past few years. Winning helps, but he's put a lot of equity, personal equity into it as well. And you were at Stillwater, I think, this past weekend where that was one of the better road showings that I've seen from a crowd in recent memory. So how much stock do you put into what they've kind of created in terms of a culture and an energized fan base at this point?
Really important. You know, a lot of people around the country don't realize the great history of K-State basketball. Kind of like, because I'm a junkie, I know about Bob Boozer, and I had a guy in my division, my district in high school, who was a 6'5" center, wasn't very good his first couple of years. He graduated the next year after I did. His name was Rolando Blackman, and I played against Roe for 2 years in high school. Tim Jankovic is a good friend, the point guard on that grade 81 team, Ed Neely. I know the history of the program, and I think what Jerome has done is he's energized the fan base, and a lot of the fan base is an older group of people who know what K-State basketball means, and so he's definitely connected with them as well as the student body. And what I love about coming to Bramlage now is that whenever we did a KU K-State game, we knew it was going to be packed and it was going to be intense, and it's as loud as any place in the country, obviously. I think the key for Coach Tang is to get it so that even when Oklahoma State or Iowa State comes in, that it's a madhouse. And if he can keep that going, then I think things bode well, because they're going to keep getting players. And they want to create an environment every game the way it is at Allen, at Hilton, because the team deserves it, and it's a great venue, and it's a great tradition.
Well, I definitely agree with you that these guys are going to continue to get players. I mean, a great top 20 recruiting class coming in already next year, and K-State fans are very excited about the future. I think with that comes, and this is just the reality of college athletics, right? With that success comes a little bit of trepidation about, okay, like, are we going to lose this guy at some point? Yeah. And the Texas job is one that has had some people concerned this year. Now, Rodney Terry's done a pretty good job here, but I guess how would you frame that? How worried should K-State fans be about Jerome Tang leaving either for the Texas job or for another job at some point in time? Like, what's your read on that situation?
I would not. I don't think he'll listen to me. I mean, he might. We're friends, but I would simply say, don't mess with Happy, or be careful what you wish for. No offense to Texas basketball. I worked for Rick Barnes at Providence. Rick was the coach there 17 years. It's got some great qualities about it. They're going to the SEC, which is not necessarily a great thing from a basketball standpoint. He's coaching in the best league in the country right now. I say don't mess with Happy. He's made an incredible impact on this community already, on the Kansas State fan base. I don't see why they can't be I can't see why he can't build a program the way he helped Scott Drew build it at Baylor. Think about it. I lived in Dallas 19 years. Waco is getting better and better, more hotels, more restaurants. But it's only a spot you used to stop on the way between Dallas and Austin. Now it's become sort of like a Chip and Joanna, Scott Drew, new arena coming. And I think he could do the same thing at K-State. And I don't see why what he's already done isn't creating one of the better coaching environments in all of college basketball. He may turn this into a top 10, basketball program nationally, or at worst, top 25, which means you're always competing for a national title. So if he asked me, I would just simply say, don't mess with Happy.
Love that, Fran. Hey, what do you think Texas should do with the coaching job this offseason? I know it'll be based, largely how they finish in NCAA tournament, but what would you do if you're Texas?
Well, my good friend Dickie V said the other day, give him the job. He deserves the job. And I would take a more clear-eyed view. I think Rodney has done a great job. I think he should be a very strong candidate. I think if you're the athletic director at Texas, Chris Del Conte, he's probably going to look for the biggest name possible. If Eric Spoelstra is interested in going to college, which he's not, or somebody like that, Billy Donovan wants to leave the Chicago Bulls, I think you would be doing your due diligence by trying to find that out. I think when it's all said and done, Rodney Terry will be a very strong candidate for the job. And depending on how his team finishes, he may actually get the job and would do a good job. Having said that, I think it's been a 2-month interview process for him, maybe 3, because we've all seen his work, and it's been very, very, very good. And if I'm an athletic director at another school like Ole Miss, I get on the phone with his agent right now and say, hey, listen, we're not going to wait. As soon as the season ends, we're hiring Rodney Terry. So we'll see. But I think Rodney's in a really good spot. He's got tremendous respect from the rest of the coaches. He's got good players and a good staff. And if Texas is where he wants to be, I think he's got another 3 weeks to show them that he's the right guy. That may happen.
Circling back to just a couple questions on this K-State team, Fran, we talk about Keontae obviously a lot and Marquise, but I'm wondering for your thoughts on some of K-State's more role guys like a Desi Sills and what he brings to the table. He just plays so hard. And then a Naquan Tomlin who, potentially you hear a lot of talk about an NBA future if he can develop and get stronger, right? So I'm just curious for your thoughts on guys like them.
Well, Desi's a godsend because Desi not only came late to campus, as you know, but if you know anything, and I know you guys do, Desi's history is that he wins everywhere. Two state championships. He was a starter on an Elite Eight team. People don't realize that he suffered through a shoulder injury the next year and played hurt. And then when he decides he's going to leave for a bigger role, he goes back home to Arkansas State and has a great season, and they win for the first time in a few years. And so Desi, to me, is the ultimate warrior. He's the guy that when as good as the two main guys are, as we've talked about, Desi's the guy that you want right by your side in a street fight, figuratively. And he plays that way. He plays with great energy, and he's tough. He's a winner, and so I love him. And Naquan, great story. I never heard of Naquan, and I'm a New Yorker, until I came to campus in October. And he's got a lot of potential. I know he'll probably take a peek at professional basketball if he came out right now. And I could be wrong, and I'll apologize to him in 5 years when he's starting in the NBA. But right now, as of today, he'll spend a lot of time in the G League. And so if I were him, I would come back, get stronger, become more of an important player on next year's team, maybe the best player, who knows, but definitely have even a bigger role and then move on to his pro future from there. So those two guys come to mind. Just off the top of my head, David Gasson, terrific role player, defensive guy, love what he's doing. They've got a lot of good pieces to their mix. They've got the stars, they've got the Energizer Bunny, they've got some good defensive players, really good role players.
Fran, before I let you go, just looking at the Big 12 overall, I know you mentioned you feel like basically anybody in this league could get to a Sweet 16, but
yeah.
Who are you feeling best about as we head into the postseason here, having a chance to make deep runs in the league?
I would say in order, Kansas and K-State. Kansas, for obvious reasons, been there, done that, and they've retooled. You don't even know that they lost 75% of their scoring in 2 first-round picks. And obviously the way they're playing right now, they have a DNA about them that like, hey, we're winning. We're Kansas. We're winning, right? And I know that bugs some K-State people, but that's just a fact. K-State is going to be a hard out because they're going to compete, and it's going to be a street fight in every single one of those tournament games. And if Keontae and Marquise are on their game offensively, then that's a team that can obviously get to a Final Four. I worry about Baylor's health. Getting John back, everyday John back, is critical. I love the way Dale Bonner and Langston Love played in the absence of Keontae George Saturday, which really bodes well for them because that's increased their depth. I don't think Keontae's ankle injury is serious. He should be back soon, but I just worry about their health at the end of the year. Texas is experienced, but they struggle to score at times, so I worry about them. But again, I'm worried about them in the context of the best league in the country. All of these teams, as Iowa State showed last year, 7-11 in the league, they get to a Sweet 16. Team that's really, I think, under the radar is TCU. I love TCU because they're built for the tournament, and anybody who doesn't realize why they were 1-5 hasn't been following, because Mike Miles, that's like losing Pat Mahomes. It really is. I mean, some guys, you lose your point guard, it's not that big a deal. But when you lose Mike Miles at TCU, you're losing Pat Mahomes. And now that he's back, their swag is back, so they're really dangerous. And of course, they just went and beat a really hot Texas Tech team on the road. So I think, first of all, I think Kansas City is going to be incredible. I'm actually doing 7 of the 9 games. I'm doing the first round Wednesday night, and those 2 games are going to be unbelievable. It used to be, all right, who's going to win and has to play Kansas the next night? And in this case, 7-10 game, assuming they play KU, both of those teams can beat Kansas. And the 8-9 can obviously beat whoever ends up number 2. It'll be fun.
It's my favorite event of the year, Fran. I always look forward to getting down to I live in Kansas City, getting to the Big 12 tournament. You know this. You've been coming for a long time, and it's a spectacle. It's an event. Probably the best conference tournament there is with the way that it's set up and the conference.
I think, Cole, even my friend Steve Forbes would agree.
Wait, hey, Fran.
Have you ever watched some of those ACC opening round games? Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I watch it. There's nobody there, right? I mean, the thing, like, the last couple of years, I've even noticed, like, on Wednesday nights, in KC, when it's, like, no local, like, you don't have Iowa State, KU, K-State, and that sometimes, and there's still good crowds. I mean, people just want to go out and watch good basketball. So
this year more than ever.
Oh, yeah, that Wednesday night, it's great basketball to watch. I wanted to have a fun one for you. What's it like getting on Twitter after every game you broadcast and dealing with these fans?
Do I go on Twitter? You know what's funny is, first of all, I do not take. I love having the outlet for basketballs, like the Mr. Iba, Gallagher Iba Arena, the history of that. Put out videos for coaches. I just put out a Baylor Texas thing just a few minutes ago. I don't take Twitter seriously. I think I'm gonna have to go see my pastor, because I'm getting kinder in my old age, but I'm starting to block more people. And I don't know if that's a sin or not. I don't know. But I enjoy the banter. And K-State fans are starting. I never heard from them until this year. I don't take Twitter seriously. I really don't. I don't like vulgarity. I'll block you instantly if it's vulgarity, but I don't mind the back and forth. I always check to see how many followers somebody has. And no offense, I'm not but if somebody's got 13 followers, I'm not going to come back and bash them. You know what I mean? It's someone who's on Twitter is just getting their voice out, like talk radio. So it's all good. And I like the interaction. I do. And by the way, the KU fans never figured out, probably starting 5 years ago, that I used to start to tweak a couple of them just because I didn't want to be the KU homer for the Big 12. When George and Monty are playing great at Iowa State, I want to talk about them. When Barry Brown and when Dean Wade from St. John, Kansas, they still don't have a McDonald's in St. John. You got to go to Great Bend to get a McDonald's, Happy Meal. I like to tell people about that. So I've always used Twitter as a way to tell people about the Big 12, and I don't take it personally when people come back at me. I don't.
Yeah, well, like you, I mean, I've stopped engaging and responding to people that have like 8 or 9 followers, and I don't even bother when they come at you like that. Hey, one more on Jerome Tang, but what do you make of his style? Like when they win, right? He jumps into the student section, he does the Wabash, he jumped on the scores table after the KU game. Just the things that he does engaging with the fan base. What do you make of that from him?
Well, it's authentic, and so I don't have a problem with it. I will say at some point in time, the other coaches in the league, they're very competitive, and they'll say to their team, we ain't letting this guy jump into the stands tonight, okay? But having said that, because they're all competitors, these are Hall of Fame coaches, and not because anyone is a Hall of Fame coach did they ever tell me that. I don't want you to think it was somebody who was in the Hall of Fame that said that, but my coaching hat is on, and I say, if I was playing against them, we ain't letting them celebrate tonight. Having said that, it's extremely authentic. It's exactly what the fan base needed. And it's fun to have a coach who just values being part of this incredible community. So, will he tone it back? I don't know. Maybe he shouldn't. I just think it's real, it's authentic, and he just loves the connection with the fan base and the students. Because one thing I know about K-State students, man, when they're engaged in their program, football, basketball, I'm sure some of the other sports, they're incredible fans. And Jerome is added to that. Jerome is added to that for sure.
Yeah, it's working right now. No doubt about that. Fran, we really appreciate you being so gracious with your time, taking this time for us. Appreciate everything you do for the league, and it's been a blast talking with you. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again soon.
Thank you, John. You guys have fun. Come up and say hi to me in Kansas City if you're there.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, Educate. Inform. KC Sports Network.